cheating on my husband to pay the rent. Life sucked. Stacy couldn't believe how bad it had gotten. When she and Don got married, life seemed so promising. They were madly in love with each other. Don had a good job. They lived in a nice part of town, and everything was going great. And then, in an instant, everything went bad. Don helped pay for college by joining the ROTC, and after graduating, he served 3 years on active duty before coming home and going into the reserves. He and Stacy met, fell in love and married, and while she hated giving up Don for 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks every summer, she realized he had a commitment. And then that clown in the White House decided he needed to be macho, and now Don was sitting on top of a sand dune somewhere on the other side of the world. Don made good money when he was home, but he worked as a commission salesman, and when he was drafted into the Army, the money stopped coming in. Stacy got a job, and that, along with Don's paychecks, was enough to keep the wolf away from the door. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Bush got so bad at managing the economy that she lost her job when her company went bankrupt. She hadn't worked there long enough to qualify for unemployment, and Don's government check wasn't enough to pay her rent, pay her utilities, and buy food. And now there's this. When she returned from another fruitless day of job hunting, she found an eviction notice on her apartment door. She hadn't paid her rent in 2 months, and there was no way she could find the money. Don was an only child, and both of his parents were dead, and Stacy had never known her own. She was left in a basket on the steps of the police station with a note saying, "We can't take care of her," and she spent her life going from one foster home to another. She was sitting at the kitchen table sipping tea and feeling sorry for herself when there was a knock on the front door. She looked out the peephole and saw that her visitor was Jonas. Jonas was the apartment manager, and although he had never been nice to her, she still felt uncomfortable having him around. He was in his early 60s, had a disheveled beard, and was at least 40 pounds overweight, and Stacy didn't doubt for a minute that he probably had bad breath and body odor, too. She pondered whether to open the door and talk to him, but then decided there was no point in avoiding the inevitable. She unbuckled the security chain and opened the door. "I assume you saw the notice on the door," Jonas said. Stacy nodded affirmatively. Jonas said, "If I am allowed to come in and talk to you, I can help you with your problem." Stacy, hoping for a miracle, stepped back and allowed Jonas to enter. She offered him a cup of tea, and when he accepted, she led him into the kitchen and invited him to sit at the table. Stacy served Jonas a cup of tea and then sat across from him to hear what he had to say. Jonas took a sip of his tea and set the cup on the table. He looked at Stacy and said, "You're going to be very angry with me, and I'm sorry for that. But as angry as you are, please remember that all I'm trying to do is help. Your situation, as I see it, is this. You have no money, you haven't paid your rent in 2 months, and in 2 more weeks, it will be 3 months. The papers for your eviction have already been drawn up, and the only way to stop this is to pay off the arrears and pay 1 month in advance. The total amount is $3,600. And I don't suppose you have the money for even 1 month's rent, let alone 4. He looked intently at Stacy. "Am I right?" All Stacy could do was nod her head in the affirmative. "As the property manager, I have some leeway in these matters, and while there is no way I can help with $3,600, I can help you not be evicted, at least for a while you try to find the money. The question is, how desperate are you?" Stacy didn't know how to answer that question, so she just shrugged. Jonas continued, "The company allows me to give some tenants a credit against the rent for work done in the complex. For example, old Mrs. O'Neill gets her rent halved every month for cleaning out empty apartments and getting them ready for new tenants to move in." Stacy started to say something, but Jonas raised his hand to stop her. "Don't get your hopes up. I have a lot of jobs like that, and right now it's all I can do to keep Mrs. O'Neill busy, and with her only receiving Social Security, she needs all the help she can get. I want to offer you something that Mrs. O'Neill won't be able to do. Not many people are interested in a 67-year-old lady. Hearing this made Stacy go cold. She was beginning to realize where Jonas was going with this, and Jonas could see in her face that she was guessing what he was going to say. So he continued, "I'll forgive 1 month's rent for one night with you." Stacy rose from her chair, her face flushed with anger, and she was ready to tell Jonas where he could go, but he held up his hand again. "I'm not asking for an answer right now. Think it over. If you decide to refuse, you must realize that you will have to leave here in 7 days, and you will not be allowed to take any of your personal belongings with you. They will be stored in a warehouse until you pay off the company, and if you don't, they will be auctioned off to pay off some of the debt. Think about it. You are young and healthy, and I know you miss the constant sex you had before your husband left. You can do 2 things at once here. Stay a while longer and relieve the sexual frustration. If you decide to opt out, that's fine with me, but think about it and give me a call. If there's no call from you this time tomorrow, I'll know that you've decided to become one of the people off the street. You know, homeless. Not a good time of year for that." He finished his tea and stood up. "I'll be out." Stacy watched Jonas walk out the door, and her shoulders slumped as the weight of the world fell on her. She was at a complete loss as to what she should do. She had less than $300 and a list of things as long as her arm that she needed money for. Rent, utilities, phone, car insurance, gas for her and groceries, to name just the most pressing issues. No one to turn to, nowhere to go, and no way to contact Dawn. And as if all that wasn't bad enough, Jonas just had to mention sex. Stacy was so horny she could have screamed. In one day, she had gone from 6 or 7 times a week to 0. Lots of sex up until the day Dawn left, and then immediately nothing. For 3 months, she had nothing. She couldn't even afford to buy a real toy. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she thought about it, and the fact that she didn't know when she would see Dawn again. Stacy pulled into the parking lot and sat in her car, looking out at the apartment building. She hadn't slept a wink all night, and today was another wasted day looking for a job. She tried to ignore it, but Jonas and what he'd said kept her on her toes. She glanced at her watch and cringed at what she saw. If she was going to think about the proposal Jonas had made her, she only had 2 hours. She took the mail from the mailbox and tossed it on the kitchen table as she entered the apartment, then put the kettle on. Then she sat down at the table and looked through the mail. Nothing from Dawn. It had been almost 2 weeks since she had heard from him. A notice that she was over the limit on her only credit card, a reminder that her auto insurance was overdue and that her 30-day grace period was up, a notice from the phone company warning that she would be disconnected if she didn't pay by the end of the month, and a notice from Publishers Clearinghouse that she had won $10 million. Yeah, right, she thought, tossing it in the trash. She sipped her tea and tried to think of a way for her to get out of the hole she was in, but she couldn't think of anything. She finished her tea, looked at her watch, sighed, and picked up the phone. Stacy was unclothed under her house robe and looked at Jonas, who was sitting across from her in just his underwear. "What does that mean?" she inquired. "Whatever you want," he replied. "But why would you do that, to blackmail me?" "No, honey, the tape is yours, no strings attached. I just wanted you to see the possibilities when your head clears. You've done your part, and I'll amend the ledger to get credit for 1 month's rent. By the way, you've been great, and I wish I could give you more than a 1-month credit, but I can't. There's no way I could cover myself if I did." He handed her an envelope across the table. She opened it and found it stuffed with money. A quick count revealed that there were $1,200 in there. Jonas smiled at her. "You were worth every penny, sweetheart." Jonas got up and headed to the bedroom to get dressed, while Stacy looked at the fat old man, clutching the money in her hand. Thoughts of the videotape she had just watched flashed through her mind. When she woke up, her head was throbbing like she was hungover, but she was sure she had only had 2 drinks the night before. She found herself pressed against Jonas, straddling his fat belly with one arm and holding his dignity with the other. She knew Jonas had had sex with her last night, but she couldn't remember much of it. Why she didn't just sit up and get out of bed, she didn't know, but for some reason she started stroking his body. Jonas opened his eyes and smiled at her. "That's a wonderful way to wake a man up, sweetheart." How could he do that? She wondered, remembering the events of the previous night. She was a total cheater, and she'd had sex not only with Jonas, but with 6 other men. She still didn't understand how it had happened, but the point was that Jonas had done everything he could to make her feel better about herself. "God, you're such a cheater," she thought, tangling her fingers in the older man's hair and pulling him against her body. Frenetic sex followed. Stepping out of the shower, Stacy found that Jonas had already boiled water for tea and placed a cup on the table. As she sipped her tea, she thought again about why she had had sex with the fat old man when she woke up. He was nothing like her stout husband, yet he courted her as well as he did. He didn't even look like much. A scraggly beard, yellowed teeth, and a flabby belly, but even as she looked at him and sipped her tea, she wondered if he would make love to her one more time before he left. Then he said, "Here, you need to watch this," and handed her a videotape. The tape had something on it that Stacy had not yet had time to remember. It showed her, as a cheater, doing her best to have sex with 7 men. She was having sex with them. The final shot is of Stacy lying on the bed with tears in her eyes. "One more, please. One more." Jonas then told her that he had spiked her drink to make you a little more pliable for the first time, honey, before calling friends to ask if they would be willing to part with $200 for a night with the young, sex-starved housewife. "This tape isn't blackmail, honey. It's just to show you how much you enjoyed it and that you can make money with it." As Jonas left the bedroom, Stacy handed him $900 from the envelope. "That's another month's rent. Now I only owe 1 month's rent and a month in advance, right?" Jonas took the money and nodded. Then Stacy asked, "Now that you've become my landlord, what do you get out of it?" He grinned with his yellowed teeth. "Not money, honey. All I want is to get for free what others have to pay for." Stacy looked at the fat old man and wondered if she was ready for something like that. But she liked it. The tape was proof of that. The money was good and Don would never know about it. On the other hand, she liked spending time with Jonas. "Got time now, or would you rather wait until tonight?" The old man grinned. "Why not now, and then again tonight when your company leaves? You'll have company tonight. I bet you'll like it and want to do it again, and I've got 3 guys coming over at 7 o'clock. If you want to take the night off, you'll have to tell me. Otherwise, I can keep you busy until your husband gets back. After that, we'll see." Stacy stood up and dropped her robe on the floor. "Come on, old man. Let's see if you can make me scream one more time before you leave." The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.